Thanks, Gene. I appreciate it. Let me start my video here. So first of all, what does native mean? I think that you're starting to hear more and more about that within the context of Salesforce applications. So I would say that first and foremost, it means that an application exists entirely within your company's Salesforce instance. So that's really the first criteria. The second criteria, and again, this is based on the first criteria, it's 100% certified by internal Salesforce, their InfoSec security team. When an application is deemed native, it means that every new release basically has to be vetted through their security policy because it lives inside of their Salesforce cloud. And finally, it typically means that it's built within the Salesforce declarative development environment using their development tools, their development methodologies, et cetera, which have implications for performance, security, and other features. So ease of use.
Tom, we might have lost you. Haley, can you hear me? We just lost Tom.
I can hear you just fine.
All right.
I think it's just Tom's internet.
You gotta love this.
Oh, there he is.
I apologize, everyone. I got an unexpected blip on my cable fiber interface, so please bear with me. So as I said, the ease of use is really the first big feature. So we can get on to the next one. In terms of, I know that some of the folks on the call are dialing in from other countries, and data residency is actually a really, really important consideration. When an application is native, it means that it can live in any of the Salesforce cloud instances in any region, and that can be done, fairly seamlessly. It also means that you have access to DevOps data without APIs, that your data is safe, whether it's in flight or at rest, and that you have control and visibility of your data. And the policy, looking at security later on, we talk about zero trust. What we really strive to achieve is not having an application or a vendor having access to your data, your sensitive data. You should have sole control over that. And then finally, security. I mean, we're here to talk about DevSecOps, so we really want to hit this one hard. But what native means from a security standpoint is, first and foremost, there are no back doors. So if you're using a native application, you're not using an API to access that data to come in from another cloud environment, which is obviously a security violation. When you look at it from opening up IP ranges and things like that, that can be a flag, or should be a flag, to InfoSec, to CISOs, et cetera. It also means that if you're using a native ISV, they should welcome InfoSec reviews like we do. We walk into a customer's environment and we try to seek out that security review as fast as possible because we have no trouble getting by it. And then finally, we say this, but I assume that the other native ISVs out there say the same thing. If you trust Salesforce, then you should trust that native app because it is living really inside that Salesforce house, if you will. So we already covered this, but first and foremost, it's that API access that we are trying to avoid at all costs. So with a native tool, all of your data is living inside of Salesforce. You don't have to go outside to do the processing, to do the access. So when we look at native, people say, well, why do you call yourself? Typically say is we don't call ourselves native. Salesforce has conferred that on us, okay? And for those of you who access the App Exchange on a regular basis, you may have noticed this, but it's amazing to me that people don't know about this. But when you look at one of the characteristics in the App Exchange, what you'll see is for native apps, you'll actually see a little cloud emblem there, and it says native app. So, and the reason I like to point this out is there are a number of vendors out there in ISVs who use the native term very freely. But for those of us who have made the effort to actually be native, it's very important. You know, not everyone that uses the native term is native. You need to look at the App Exchange, and you need to look for that cloud emblem. So, and by the way, we are not alone. So it's not like, you know, 2 or 3 apps out there that actually have this native status. There's hundreds and hundreds. So we are not the ones that invented this concept or, you know, decided to avail ourselves of these advantages first. There are many, many other apps that have done this. We talk to these folks on a regular basis, and we all share, you know, the same concerns around people using the native term without actually being native. And so we're not alone in this environment. Like I said, there's literally hundreds the last time I checked in the App Exchange. So let's get down to the security aspect of this. So we have all been completely deluged by security statistics, newspaper articles, online articles. It's almost to the extent that we've become a little bit desensitized, but it's getting worse every day. And I mean, I'm not here to cast a pall over the whole topic, but let's face it, I mean, it is serious. We're up to about $3.5 million in average cost for every breach that occurs. The average time to detect and contain a breach is approaching 1 year now, which is just daunting. And on top of that, there's about 300,000 new malware samples that are created every single day. So you do the arithmetic, and the situation is not getting any better. So when we talk about the advantages, back to the advantages of native, one of the things that we like to point out is the return on investment that accrues from using the Salesforce declarative environment and various other things to keep developers working somewhat autonomously and not crashing into each other, right? So we look at things like code overwrite protection, rollback, recovery, et cetera. So we built a number of tools, and we can accurately assess what the value of those tools are in terms of what it's going to save you over time. But interestingly enough, we don't always look at the savings coming from governance, risk, and compliance. So our ROI model really focuses a lot on, okay, how much faster can you get applications out the door? Now, when we bring up the governance, risk, and compliance, or when we come up with what we would consider to be an estimate based on losses on breach, you know, that come from breaches and things like that, in almost every case, the customer says, you're way low. Because, you know, obviously, companies don't always publish that data. It's not something that they want everybody to see. But, you know, we do try to make an estimate of that because it should fit into the ROI. Again, with $3.5 million per breach, you know, it's relevant. But, you know, we're only able to estimate that. And when we do estimate it, customers typically correct us and say, no, you're way low. So it's here and now. So this is a little bit of a spoiler alert. So because of our native status and because of our security advantages, we work very heavily in what I call the regulated industries. So that would be financial services, health and life sciences, and government. Now, that's by no means the full gamut of people that are security conscious. Obviously, we deal with technology companies that are developing tools for the public. I mean, they tend to be very, very, you know, security conscious. And there's a number of other industries as well. But, you know, we tend to get a lot more attention from the regulated industries. So in working with those customers over the last year or so, we have come up with, you know, this holistic DevSecOps model for Salesforce And the idea is to look across an org and provide a number of different views, okay, from high granularity auditing to monitoring and detection. We're looking at things like permission statistics, policy violations around passwords, for instance, et cetera. So expect to hear a lot more about this over the next month, but I just wanted to give you a sense, in working in these security environments, customers have given us a lot of really good data and, suggested a best practice around how we could possibly monitor individual orgs at a number of different levels. And so I just wanted to explain that to you. So what are you going to hear about today in the broader DevSecOps Summit? I think there's a number of really relevant topics that you're going to enjoy. As Gene said, one of the things is going to be bringing security and DevOps teams together. This is really a fascinating area for me. And when I talk to people about security and DevOps, it's similar in terms of bringing different cultures and methodologies together, and there's a people aspect to that. So I think it's fascinating. And it's really not that different from something else that's happening in the security domain, and that's bringing together physical and cybersecurity. So for those of you who are familiar with that, same type of thing. You've got different people from different walks of life, different training, different philosophies, and bringing them together to create a common mindset. So we don't want to trivialize that, and we're going to spend some time talking about that. Also, how do you build out your DevSecOps processes? So, there's been a number of things published around that, but I think that we've been doing it long enough to actually have some sense of what, the best practices look like, which is sort of the follow-on to building out the processes. And then why DevSecOps is so hard and how to overcome those challenges, and I gave you a little bit of a preview there concerning the human element, but, these are the kinds of things that we want to discuss.